Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. Today I'd like to give you a view of the updated jungle terrain. It's been a while since I've produced any pieces for jungle terrain, and I recently had an order came through that had most of the pieces that I'd produced in the past included in it, so it's given me a chance to redo the pieces, and I thought I'd give you a chance to take a look at some of the new changes and how they've improved. So this is a little overview of what the jungle pieces look like more from a gamer's perspective. And in this set, basically, it's given me a chance to redo three main pieces: rock outcroppings, the jungle trees, which you see in the back here, as well as some of the just general jungle stands, which can be used to fill in areas for dangerous terrain or accents, or to flesh out, a forest to make it seem a little bit more full and larger. Down below here, I have a source for scale, and I'll show you each of these pieces up close more from an eye level. So right off the bat, you can see that the terrain stands up pretty high. This is a source with a banner. This is sort of the champion standard bearer for the unit, and these are pretty high and are going to block line of sight to most infantry-sized models right off the bat. It's kind of important to me to give them a really full feel. I've seen a lot of jungle terrain made that doesn't have that density, and to me, jungle speaks impassable vegetation, so I really wanted to give it, each piece a very dense feel. Obviously, it takes quite a bit of time to do that, but in the end, to me, it's worth it. Each of the pieces is now based on a hardboard disc, and then what I do is I glue a little foam to that, and that allows me to shape that and be able to actually plunge the vegetation into the foam so that I can get a very firm bond with it with a little hot glue. Because these are plastic plants that have a very, very thin stem at the base, getting a firm attachment is really important to me. So once these are glued in place, these are really, really durable. They're not going to come apart. This gave me a chance also to go through and do a little shopping for some more jungle foliage. I basically go through Michael's and some online sites and pick out some plants that I think are going to work well. Over the years, I end up accumulating a few new styles here and there, and what you see represented amongst all of these pieces is probably somewhere between 15 to 20 different kinds of plants scattered throughout the jungle terrain. It really gives it a much more natural feel. Biodiversity for this kind of a terrain piece to me is key for making it look realistic, so I've really gone for wide diversity, and that's always something that's constantly shifting, because as I run out of a piece, sometimes I can't buy it again, and sometimes new plants are available for sale at the stores, and so it's a constantly evolving assortment of plants that lends itself to some of that diversity a little bit better. Another thing that's changed is the rock outcroppings. In the past, I was using a hand-carved rock that I was sculpting out of foam, and that just didn't have the detail that I wanted for today's pieces, so what I've done is used a mold to cast some much larger chunks of rock. I wanted them to have a substantial feel in the jungle so that it'd be impassable terrain. Gives you that kind of flexibility to play it, and with it sitting up on the the berm of foam so that I can bed the foliage, it gives it a nice height presentation as well. This is going to be, the height of the actual rock itself is above. Whoops, I'm looking at it rather than looking. Let's see if I can get that exactly lined up. It's about the height of a Swords Warrior. So let's get some real nice weight on the table and a little weight in the hand as well, as it's got a nice plaster piece in there. And that gives you a sense of what the new rock vegetation looks like. Rock stands, rock outcroppings. And lastly, I wanted to give you a chance to see the new trees. Now the trees, let's put that in air quotes, trees. What I do with the tree stands is I work hard to pick a few species of plants that I can raise up the height. This stand's about 6 inches tall at the top off the table, and I wanted something that's going to give a very tropical upright growth. But obviously, tree is, like I said, in air quotes, as they don't have, big tree trunk stems if you see inside. But what I try to do is densely vegetate it around those, so that your eye's not really drawn to it. That's not a focus of it. And you get that sense that these are, some kind of a large tropical plant growing out of that clump. The trees are the trickiest because it's often hard to find vegetation that's going to work at that kind of a scale. So you'll see as you look at the site and look at these pieces that there's quite a few varieties. I found these years ago and they were just absolutely fantastic. I love this crazy weird texture on the trunk. I got these once and I've never seen them again, and they only had one when I was there, and I've looked online and I can never find them again. So that's kind of a unique one right there, but it gives you a sense of how I try to select different kinds of plants to have a believable leaf scale at a larger size to produce something that looks a little bit more, tree-like for the presence of forests for tabletop play. And lastly, here's just one more, give you a sense, some kind of tropical palm fronds and some more of those sort of nicely serrated leaves, as well as, sort of an unusual plant that I found that's got these, sort of spiny tufts on the top. But, carrying some of these plants down lower, here it is at the tree height, and then taking some of those pieces down lower and bringing them along the base of the stand implies, new growth. Maybe these haven't reached their full size yet. And it really adds, I think, a lot to it. It takes a little more time to pick out individual leaves and glue them in, but in the end, altering those plant heights, altering their shapes, utilizing offcuts from some of the plants to create new forms is really, I think, where it's at for these stands, and it really brings, I think, about the highest level of realism for jungle terrain that I've seen available yet. It does have a slightly fantasy feel. I don't know if this would be totally appropriate for, say, 28mm Vietnam troops or something like that, if you want to play realistic, war scenarios, but might be, and it, kind of falls into a flavor of taste preferences. In the past, I had used a variety of colors. I've tried to include, there's a rare piece that's maybe a little bit of a different shade, but sometimes I found it's been a little too strong, so what I've gone for is just a variety of shades of greens and yellows that gives it, a more natural feel rather than going for something a little bright and pop out, but have included a few of brighter accents here and there, and maybe an unusual plant if I see something that I think couldn't work as a are you going to focus? There we go. That gives a more of a tropical feel, but doesn't feel too alien. And then I've included that as well. So a lot of diversity, a lot of density, a lot of height variations and shape variations, and color and texture. So really like how these came out. So I hope you enjoyed taking a look at these. Of course, I'll have pictures up on the site, and I'll put a link down below for the pictures. They've already been shot, so they should be ready by the time this video goes up. And before I get asked, I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask me, where do I get my plants from? As I mentioned in the up-close look, I tend to shop around art stores. It's a great place to try to find plastic plants, but it can vary quite a bit in terms of availability, so you may need to visit over several months to see as their stock changes. Sometimes new plants are made available, and it's also important to be able to have an eye for looking at a plant and thinking about how it can be changed, how it's going to scale down to its individual parts. The plant may have a really long stem and be obviously too large to include in a stand like this, but the removal of individual leaves allow you to create a new plant that's going to allow you to create something much more appropriate. So, you have to look at plants with a little imagination and think about how you can utilize them best for a tabletop gaming environment. I tend to discourage people from buying Games Workshop's jungle plants, for instance, and any of those that are commercially produced for tabletop gamers, as they're pretty expensive. And to be honest, to collect this kind of an assortment of plants will set you back quite a bit initially, $20, $30, $40, maybe $50, depending on the kinds of plants and the numbers that you're purchasing. But once you make that investment, you're going to have an abundance of pieces that you're going to be able to construct numerous terrain pieces in the future, and you get the added benefit of being able to match anything that you produce down the road to previous pieces that you've made. So sometimes you might feel it's worthy of an investment. Don't forget to check on online plant sale places as well, as there's plenty out there that sell a variety of, hanging vines for the house that you could then, detach pieces from, and a little more expensive, but perhaps a little bit of a different shape, and that might be all the difference that it makes for a little bit of realism. So anyway, I hope these tips help you out, and I hope you enjoyed taking a look at them. Comments down below are great, and keep an eye on the channel. Of course, I'll be back real soon with another video.